The room was full, shoulder to shoulder, every seat taken, eyes fixed on the front. But no one noticed the boy. Not at first. He was small for his age, sitting quietly on the third bench, feet not even touching the floor. 13 years old, brown corduroy pants, his backpack still slung across one shoulder like he'd wandered in from school by mistake. And then he stood. No announcement, no prompting. Just stood up, holding a worn yellow notebook in his hands. His mother, seated beside him, whispered, "Sit down, baby." Her voice cracked like something might break if he didn't. But he didn't. He walked forward, step by step, the soft thud of his sneakers against the wood floor, the only sound in the room. Conversations stopped. The judge looked up. Even the bailiff froze, unsure if they should intervene. There was something about the way the boy moved. Not confident exactly, but certain, as if he knew this moment wasn't meant for him. But he was going to take it anyway. A child, a notebook, a silence thick enough to choke on, and all at once, you felt it. Something was about to shift. Because sometimes the most powerful voice in the room doesn't come from the loudest person. It comes from the one who finally refuses to stay quiet. But what could drive a child to speak up in a place meant for lawyers and judges and people twice his size? Let me take you back to where it all began. Lydia Coleman was the kind of woman who kept things together. She worked night shifts at the hospital, cooked dinner in scrubs, and paid bills with tips and overtime. She wasn't loud, didn't complain much, just kept moving. Because stopping meant falling apart. She raised 2 boys in a small house with peeling paint and a porch light that flickered when it rained. Malik was 17, quiet, reliable. The kind of kid who said, "Yes, ma'am," to strangers and helped his shop teacher clean up after class. He loved cars, talked about engines like they were people, spent his weekends fixing up old trucks behind Mr. Gentry's garage. Then there was Andre, 13, soft-spoken, always reading something, comic books, history, anything with pages in a quiet corner. He wasn't like Malik. He didn't talk much, but he saw everything. That Tuesday night was nothing special. Dinner was spaghetti. Lydia was folding laundry on the couch, hair tied back, eyes half closed from the shift she just finished. They were out of milk and diapers. She was watching her neighbor's baby for the week. "Malik, can you run to the store real quick?" she asked. He grabbed his hoodie, keys, and kissed her cheek on the way out. "Be right back." Just a regular night, but hours passed, then 3, then 4. Lydia started pacing, called his phone, straight to voicemail. She woke Andre, asked if he'd seen him. He shook his head, rubbed his eyes, and sat on the stairs watching her move from window to window. By midnight, she was calling Malik's friends, his job, even his ex-girlfriend. Nobody had seen him. That sick feeling, that sharp, cold dread, started crawling up her spine. At 1:04 a.m. the phone rang. She answered on the first ring, her face drained, her knees buckled. "Decatur County Jail. Your son has been detained." She didn't say a word. Just sank into the couch like something had been ripped out of her. Andre was standing in the hallway, barefoot in a baggy t-shirt, watching her from the shadows. He'd never seen his mother look like that. Not even when bills were overdue. Not even when the fridge was empty. That look, that silence, said everything. She hung up. Still staring at the floor, she whispered, "They locked him up." Andre didn't understand the details. Not yet, but he felt something shift, in her, in the house, in himself. That night, his childhood ended without warning. No ceremony, no announcement, just a quiet hallway. A mother too numb to speak, and a boy standing still, trying to understand how everything could break in one phone call. What happened next would test everything they thought they knew about right, wrong, and the space between. The official story went like this. Malik Coleman was pulled over just after 10 p.m. on Martin Street. Officers claimed they smelled marijuana. They asked him to step out. He questioned why. They said he resisted. They said he struck an officer. They called it assault, but what really happened depended on who you asked. Malik said he was driving home from the store, 2 blocks from their house, when blue lights flashed behind him. He pulled over, turned off the engine, placed both hands on the wheel, just like his mama had taught him. The first officer, Pruitt, white, early 30s, asked for license and registration. Malik complied. The second officer, a tall black man, didn't say much, just peered into the back seat with a flashlight. Then came the question, "You carrying anything illegal?" "No, sir." "Step out of the car." "Why?" That was it. That one word. Pruitt said Malik became aggressive, said he refused orders, said they had to act. Malik said they dragged him out, bent his arm behind his back until something snapped. He screamed. Told them he wasn't resisting. They didn't stop. By the time Lydia saw him, his shoulder was swollen. His wrists were raw. But the officer had a scraped forearm, and that was enough to charge Malik with resisting arrest and assault. Someone caught part of the incident on video, from a second-floor window across the street. But it started too late. You couldn't see how it began. Only the end. Malik on the ground, yelling in pain, Officer Pruitt pressing a knee into his back. The other officer just standing there frozen. When people don't see how something starts, they fill in the blanks with what they already believe. Some folks in town said Malik brought it on himself. Cops don't pull people over for no reason. Should have just kept his mouth shut. Others shook their heads. Another black kid in a nice car, wrong side of town. They say they smelled something. Yeah, they always do. Andre heard it all. At school, in line at the grocery store, even outside church. They weren't talking about Malik like a person. They were talking about him like a headline, a statistic. Another black boy in cuffs. But to Andre, Malik wasn't a suspect. He was the one who helped Mom fix the sink when it leaked. The one who bought Andre his first comic book. The one who made scrambled eggs every Saturday morning. A few days after the arrest, Lydia was finally allowed to visit Malik at the jail. Andre waited in the hallway. The visit only lasted 5 minutes. She came out, eyes red, quiet. Later that night, she told Andre what he said. They kept saying I smelled like something, Mom, Malik had whispered, but I don't even smoke. I swear. Lydia didn't answer right away. Then she just said, I know, baby. I know. Andre didn't sleep that night, because no one was asking what really happened. No one wanted to know why Malik asked. Why? And Andre realized if the truth was going to be heard, someone had to speak it out loud. Someone people wouldn't expect. That's when the idea started. Not as a plan. Not yet. Just a thought. Maybe the truth just needs a better voice. After Malik's arrest, something in the Coleman house shifted. The air felt tighter, heavier, like grief had moved in and was sitting on the edge of every chair. Lydia still woke up early, still packed lunches, still ironed uniforms. But her movements were slower, her eyes dimmer. She hummed less when she stirred her coffee. And Andre got quiet. He stopped playing basketball after school, stopped riding his bike to the corner store, stopped answering texts from his friends. Instead, he sat at the kitchen table. Every day after school, same spot, same worn chair. He'd slide off his backpack, pull out a yellow notepad, and flip it open like it held the only map that mattered. The pages were already filled with scribbles, quotes, underlined laws, names he could barely pronounce. He'd borrowed books from the library, legal dictionaries, civics textbooks, even a dusty copy of the Constitution. And every night, he'd write what Malik had said, what time it happened, what the officers looked like, what words came first. He treated each sentence like evidence, like puzzle pieces only he could fit together. One night, Lydia stood in the kitchen doorway, watching him. He hadn't noticed her. He was whispering to himself, pacing the floor, holding that notebook like a shield. According to the Fourth Amendment, search without probable cause is unconstitutional. The smell of marijuana is not proof. His voice was soft but steady, practiced. She finally spoke. Andre, what are you doing, baby? He looked up, startled, eyes wide, notebook pressed against his chest like he'd been caught with something sacred. Just trying to figure it out, he said. Figure what out? He hesitated, then answered softer this time. If I don't understand the rules, how do I know if they broke them? She exhaled, long, tired, walked over, placed a hand on his shoulder. This is not your fight. It is now, he whispered. She didn't argue, just squeezed his shoulder and left the door open behind her. The next day at school, Andre approached Mr. Voss, his civics teacher. A tall man with gray hair and tired eyes, Voss was the kind of teacher who still believed kids could change things. Andre asked if there was a way to learn more, about rights, about the law. Voss didn't lecture. He just opened a drawer, handed Andre a photocopied Constitution and a list of landmark cases. Start with these, he said, if you're serious. Andre was. He read Terry v. Ohio, then Mapp v. Ohio, Illinois v. Wardlow. He took notes like he was cramming for a test no one else knew about. He underlined words like unreasonable, search and seizure, probable cause. But one word stuck out more than the rest: reasonable. What did that even mean? Who decides what's reasonable? A nervous cop? A tired judge? A prosecutor looking for a win? He wrote the question in big, bold letters across the top of his notebook. Who decides what's reasonable? At night, Andre practiced speaking, out loud, alone. He mimicked the tone of lawyers in YouTube trial clips. Tried pausing like they did. Stressed the same syllables. Not to sound smart. Not for show. But because he knew, if he ever got the chance to speak, he'd only have one shot. He didn't want to mess it up. Some nights, Lydia would hear him down the hall, voice low, pacing like an attorney preparing for court. She never stopped him again. She just listened, quietly, through the wall. The notebook filled up faster than he expected. Page after page, line after line. Malik once told him, "You don't fight fire with fire, kid. You fight it with focus." Andre took that to heart, because maybe, just maybe, if he could understand the law better than the people using it against his brother, he could turn the rules into a weapon of his own. And what he didn't know yet was that his chance to use it was coming, sooner than anyone expected. The courtroom was full, restless, humming, heavy, the kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful. It felt loaded. Malik sat near the front, hands cuffed, ankles chained. His orange jumpsuit hung loose on his shoulders, one eye swollen, lips tight. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't have to. He knew who was there and who wasn't. Behind him sat Lydia, her hands locked in her lap like she was praying they wouldn't shake. Beside her, Andre, feet barely touching the ground, a yellow notepad resting on his knees. The judge hadn't arrived yet, neither had the public defender. People murmured, glanced at watches. The prosecutor, neat and sharp in a charcoal suit, tapped her pen against the folder on her desk, impatient. The room felt like it was waiting for something, but no one knew what. Andre looked at his brother, then at his mother, then down at his notebook. His fingers curled around it, and he stood. No one noticed at first, but as he stepped into the aisle, the whispers stopped. A few turned, then more. And suddenly the boy was walking toward the front of the courtroom. Lydia whispered under her breath, low, tight, urgent. "Sit down, Andre." But he didn't. His sneakers squeaked softly against the wooden floor. He walked all the way to the defense table and placed his notebook down gently like something sacred. Then the door behind the bench opened. Judge Raymond Hart entered, stern face, slow steps. He took his seat, adjusted his glasses, and looked at the boy. "What is this?" Andre took a breath. "I'm sorry, Your Honor. I know I'm not supposed to be up here, but I wrote something for my brother. I was hoping I could read it, just while we're waiting." The judge's brow furrowed. He looked toward the prosecutor. She raised one shoulder and said nothing. There was a pause, just long enough for the room to forget how to breathe. Then the judge nodded once. 2 minutes. Andre's fingers trembled as he opened the notebook, but when he spoke, his voice was clear. "My name is Andre Coleman. I'm 13 years old, and I've been studying the law since the night my brother was arrested." Eyes blinked, chairs shifted. No one dared interrupt. "I read the Fourth Amendment. I didn't even know what that was before. Now I know it's about protection, from illegal searches, from being stopped for no reason." He looked up, locking eyes with the judge. "The officers who pulled my brother over said they smelled marijuana, but they didn't find any. Just his school books and a bag of food. Smell isn't proof, it's a guess." His voice didn't shake. He wasn't performing. He was simply saying what needed to be said. Since when is a guess enough to throw someone to the ground? A murmur ran through the gallery. The judge lifted his hand. Silence returned. Andre turned a page. He didn't rush. "My brother's shoulder was dislocated. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't fight. He asked, why? And that was enough to end up here, in chains." He paused again, not for effect, just to breathe. "I'm not saying he's perfect. None of us are. But if the law only works for some people, then it's not justice. It's just permission." He closed the notebook softly, then looked around, not sure if he should say more. But there was nothing else to say. The truth had already been spoken. He stepped back, notebook still in hand, and returned to his seat beside his mother. Lydia reached for him, hand trembling. No one moved. The courtroom had become a still photograph, and in the very back row, a man in a gray blazer leaned forward. Anthony Craig, private defense attorney. Sharp, Respected, uninvited. He had come to observe, nothing more. But as Andre sat down, Craig stood up, quietly slipped out the door, phone already in hand. Because sometimes the right words don't come from lawyers. They come from the people who were never supposed to speak in the first place. And Craig, he wasn't about to let those words disappear into silence. 20 minutes after Andre spoke, the courtroom felt different. No one looked at Malik the same way. Not as a suspect. Not as a problem. They saw a family, a mother, a kid brother with a notebook full of laws no 13-year-old should ever have to understand. Then the door opened again, and in walked the man from the back row. Gray blazer, calm stride, eyes sharp with purpose. Anthony Craig, private defense attorney out of Columbus. He didn't smile, he didn't make a scene. He just walked to the bench and quietly asked to speak with the judge. A recess was called. Behind closed doors, Craig offered to join as co-counsel, pro bono. He didn't come empty-handed. He referenced Andre's words directly, quoted the Fourth Amendment, cited cases the boy had scribbled down in that yellow notebook. He questioned the officer's report, pointed out how it failed to justify the stop, and then he asked the question everyone else had tiptoed around. If the search was illegal, what evidence remains? The judge didn't answer, but he didn't say no either. When court resumed, Craig sat beside Malik. The room stirred. Whispers bounced off the walls like dropped marbles. Lydia clutched her purse like a lifeline. Andre stared at the new man beside his brother, half in awe, half in disbelief. Craig's presence changed everything, not because he was flashy, but because he knew what to do with the truth that had already been spoken. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and addressed the court. His tone was steady, clear, respectful. Your Honor, I move to suppress all evidence obtained during the traffic stop on the grounds that the initial stop lacked probable cause. He walked the room slowly, building momentum. The officers claimed they smelled marijuana. That's their justification. And yet, no drugs were found, no paraphernalia, no residue, nothing. He turned to Officer Pruitt, seated stiffly in the witness box. Officer, Craig asked, can you describe the smell? Pruitt blinked. Excuse me? You said you smelled marijuana. Was it fresh, burnt, pungent? He paused. Be specific. Pruitt shifted in his seat. I assumed it was marijuana. That's what it usually is. Craig's eyebrows rose just slightly. But did you confirm it before you searched the vehicle? Another pause. I know. I didn't. The silence that followed was louder than any gavel. Craig didn't press further. He didn't need to. The damage was done. Then came the final blow. Craig submitted new evidence. A grainy surveillance video from a convenience store on the corner of Martin Street. It showed Malik's car, driving normally, stopping at signs, no swerving, no erratic movement, and behind him, the police cruiser, lights off, following. At no point did Malik run a light or speed. There was no cause, no justification, just suspicion. And now that suspicion wasn't enough. Craig rested his case, and the courtroom sat still again. The prosecutor shuffled her notes. The judge didn't look up. Andre leaned forward in his seat, heart thudding, fingers wrapped tight around the edge of his notebook. He didn't say a word, but he didn't have to. Because Craig had just taken the words Andre spent weeks writing and turned them into something the court couldn't ignore. And while the law hadn't changed, something else had. The ground beneath the case had started to shift, and the boy with the yellow notebook, he was no longer just watching. He was being heard. The next morning, the courtroom was quieter. No buzz, no whispers. Just a stillness that felt like the moment before a storm breaks or before the sun finally rises. Malik sat beside Craig at the defense table. No cuffs this time. His wrists rested on the wood, free but uncertain. Lydia sat behind him, back straight, jaw tight, hands folded like she was holding her whole body together. Andre sat beside her, notebook on his lap, thumb tracing the edge of the cover. Judge Hart adjusted his glasses, tapped his pen once, and then he spoke. This has been a difficult case, he said, voice steady, but lower than usual. Emotions are high, facts have been unclear, but the law must remain the law. He paused, let the silence settle like dust. The defense has presented substantial concerns regarding the legality of the initial stop. There is no clear probable cause. The body cam footage is incomplete, and the surveillance video raises serious doubts. He looked directly at the prosecutor, then at Malik. I am granting the motion to suppress all evidence obtained during the stop. Gasps broke across the room. Small, sharp, then silence just as quickly. It wasn't a not guilty verdict. It wasn't over. But it was the ground shifting, the foundation cracking. The prosecutor asked for time to reassess. The judge agreed. And then quietly, without fanfare, Malik was released on his own recognizance. No bail, no chains, just a gray hoodie and the weight of everything he'd carried. When he stepped through the courtroom doors, Lydia rose first. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She walked to her son, wrapped her arms around him and held him like she had never let go in the first place. Andre stood a step behind, notebook clutched tight against his chest like a shield. Malik saw him, really saw him, and smiled. That tired, grateful smile only brothers know how to give. He reached out, pulled Andre into the hug. 3 people, 1 breath, 1 moment. People passed them in the hallway, glancing, whispering. But the Colemans didn't care. They had already heard enough noise. Craig walked by, briefcase in hand, expression unreadable. But as he passed Andre, he paused, just long enough to say, "You shook the ground under this courthouse, son. Don't forget that." Andre didn't answer. He just nodded. Not like a kid saying thank you, but like someone who knew exactly what he'd done. Outside, the sun had finally broken through the clouds. And though the fight wasn't finished, something powerful had begun. And deep down, Andre knew this story wasn't just his brother's anymore. It was his too, and it was only just beginning. Andre didn't talk much about the courtroom after that. Not at school, not at dinner, not even when people asked. But something about him had changed. He still rode his bike home, still sat at the kitchen table after school. Only now his yellow notebook had been replaced by 2, 1 for homework, 1 for the law. He didn't say he wanted to be a lawyer, didn't boast, didn't preach. But people noticed, the way his classmates looked at him, the way teachers paused when he raised his hand, even the way folks at the grocery store nodded quietly as he passed. One morning, the school principal called him into her office. She didn't say much at first, just looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. "You reminded a lot of people," she said, "that even kids can carry justice." She reached into her drawer and handed him a new notebook, leather-bound, clean pages. "Keep writing." Weeks later, Andre stood at the front of his civics class. The desks were scratched, the air smelled like pencil shavings, but he stood tall, steady. And for the first time, he told the story. Not to brag, not to relive it, but to remind everyone in the room, "I didn't speak because I was brave. I spoke because I couldn't stay silent anymore." And the room, just for a moment, was completely still. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you'd like to hear more stories that matter, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us. It's what keeps us going, one story at a time.